Hello, everyone. What we're here to discuss this evening is conflict and conflict resolution that may arise in the churches today. The first thing we're going to establish is that conflict is inevitable. No one can avoid conflict. It's going to happen. Even if we don't go looking for it, it will find us. If we go to our textbook, Leadership Handbook of Management and Administration, on page 16, William Willimon states, whenever two or more people pursue mutually exclusive goals, or whenever one person's needs collide with another's, conflict results. If there were no effort among humans to fulfill ideas, goals, or desires, there would be no conflict. So, the specific conflict that we're talking about is the kind that can and will arise in most churches, and whether or not there is something positive in the conflict. First off, what I want to establish is that any conflict resolution, whether positive or negative, no matter what we think we know or what our training states, there is only one positive authority that can speak the right resolution into that conflict, and that would be this book right here, the Holy Bible. All the answers to resolve conflict are in here. This book is full of conflict. This book is full of conflict resolution. The three main categories that I pulled out of our textbook that may arise in our churches are change management, theological rifts, and church tension. The question posed is that, can conflict be positive at all? Going once again to our textbook on the next page, it states, as surprising as it may seem to peacemaking pastors, conflict has a positive role to play in the congregation. In conflict, a group is energized. So let's start with the first conflict, which would be change management. Changes happen, churches grow. Then, as new people come in, there's always a bit of a tension because churches are evolving. They have a tendency to be what's the word I'm looking for? They want to be current. They don't necessarily have to water down the gospel. You can still be a Bible believing, Jesus preaching church, but you don't have to be stiff, and you know where I'm going with that. I've seen this in another church that I was in when the older pastor retired, that he was an older gentleman. The board of elders were all older, and there was new young people coming in, and the new pastor was 24 years old. So there was a lot of conflict because the music got fresh. There was different things. The church was taking on another vision, and the older people didn't like to change. They wanted things to stay the way they were. The way that I think that young pastor really handled this conflict pretty well, and one that I would take an example of, is that he preached scripturally and brought the word to the situation, and showed how in the Bible how older generations would give way to the younger generations, that God does something different in each generation, and how it was pretty much the obligation of the older crowd to pass the reins, pass the mantle, as Elijah did to Elisha, and let new things happen, and embrace the way that God was moving. And if this is done in a gentle and loving way, I think that's a very positive way to change that conflict. Another subcategory that they had in our book was native versus new, which I didn't use that as a category because it kind of speaks to what I just said about the natives, the people who've been there for a while, and the new people coming in, the older people not understanding that just because you've sat in that pew for 10 years and there's 40 people over here that's been here for 10 years, but there's 40 people over here that's been here for 10 days. This church just as much belongs to them. They have a need, they have a say, and it's finding positive ways to integrate that. I mean, it can go two different ways. The older people can become bitter and distant, or they can sow into and share their experience of this church with the new people, and there can be a positive, cohesive blending. The next category are theological rifts, and with so many Bible translations out there and so many books nowadays, and with so many different things going on with this new apostolic revival and the third wave, and just so much different stuff out there, that people are going to disagree on certain theological things. And I think that this is one that to resolve this conflict is, I belong to a Southern Baptist church. The Southern Baptist church has a specific creed, if you will, a specific doctrine, a specific set of things that they believe in. And when I attend this church, I am of the understanding that this is what's going to be taught to me. This is what's going to be adhered to. This is the direction that this church is going to go. And I need to be ready to embrace that. I have to be taught, and some people have to be taught, that I don't have the right to come in and just because I have a different theological view on a specific thing, that I can just demand change. The same church I was speaking to that about a moment ago that I used to attend, they would have a new member. In order to become a member, you had to go through a little certain class and sign a covenant with the church. And I think this is a good idea to resolve these things. And things that were taught was that there are specifics that the church believes and will adhere to, and there are things that are called liberties. Now, one of the examples of liberties was the speaking of tongues, and the way the older pastor there had put it was that you may believe that it's a common practice today. You may believe that it doesn't exist anymore, but you have the liberty to believe the way you do. It does not change the common ground, the basis of salvation, the basic of the biblical teachings that this church adheres to. And as long as we allow each other these theological differences that don't change the root message, then there's a certain amount of cohesion and exchange that can be proper there. The last one that we're going to talk about is church tension, and these do arise. In the church I'm in now, we're having a tension. There's an older gentleman that he likes to work with the kids. He's got an awesome heart towards children, but his mind doesn't line up. We've got a lot of inner city kids, a lot of urban kids. They have problems with authority, and they challenge him, and it tends to get him a little bit angry. And he was asked to not work as tight with the kids as he had been. So the new pastor and I, we got together, and my child needed a little bit of guidance. And this man has been withdrawing a little bit because he hasn't been able to work with the kids. And so this week, there's a learning experience going on here for two people. There's a child that's learning work ethic, respecting elders, that's learning, just a lot of things that this gentleman can teach him. But by the same token, they need each other, because this child's teaching him, because my son is very respectful. If I thought he would get that man with that, to that aspect of his personality, I'd never let him go. But so he's teaching him the patience, and the pastor had talked to him, and I had talked to him about what needs to be done to find a bond between his heart and his mind to make his ministry productive. And the conflict, I think, is starting to resolve between him and the children, because we found a positive aspect for both of them to work together. They both need something, and it may be tough this week, and there may be some counseling involved for both of them afterwards, but they're both going to find the resolution and the lesson that they need to learn. There's other tensions that can arise in the church, and we have a regular business meeting once a month, and we will propose those things. Sometimes what needs to be done, something, if there's a specific conflict, even if we don't have to mention names, will be brought up at the business meeting, like this situation has arose, it's been causing this kind of tension, we're going to vote on this. Everybody who's involved or has something to say about it needs to speak up now and get it done. And there's plenty of other kind of tensions that can arise in the church, and each one will be different. Our textbook gave several different examples between internal and external conflict that can arise. And like I said, the authority is here. This is the final authority. The proof in the pudding is learning how to identify each aspect of these conflicts, addressing them, and then finding what does this say about that situation. If you have a conflicting situation and you see and you look to find God in the situation, then God will too here lead you out of the situation and resolve the conflict. Whether it started out as negative or positive, it will have a positive outcome. Thank you for listening. You have a blessed evening.